Hey everybody, Brian Good here with the latest update on Storm Talk. Brian Hoke, by the way, I'm filling in for him this morning, but he will be here for this afternoon and evening for your evening shows. Okay, you guys ready? A lot to discuss over the next 48 hours. For those of you that are not used to watching these blogs, keep in mind this is a detailed meteorological discussion. This is for those that are wanting to know what exactly is the data we are looking at. Why are we saying, this or that? Tornadoes and flooding. Why are we saying that kind of stuff, and who's going to get it kind of deal? The more nuts and bolts of the forecast, by the way, will be on the Grab and Go weather update. It's also on the app, by the way, and on way3.com, just the general forecast of things. But this is more in-depth stuff I can't do in 3 minutes of television. All right, so let's break it down. First off, the radar trends. Warm front bearing down now in wave country in the southern flank anyway of our counties. And this is what we call isotropic lift. On the north side of the front, you get showers and some elevated thunderstorms. Elevated bases are pretty high up across Jasper and Tupelo, but some lightning is taking place. It is trying to build, by the way, as the front is moving through. You're starting to get more redevelopment, and we may see that trend continue as well into Louisville before the front really takes over. So don't be surprised. There it is, the rain and some lightning strikes again, anywhere from Du Bois County to Crawford and Perry. Here in Lowell, we've had passing downpours. One passed through downtown, the Highlands, into St. Matthews and Middletown. Quite the downpour. Now a break, but likely at least one or two more before we see another break this afternoon. So let me broaden the view out, because this is the interesting setup here for this afternoon with that warm push with a warm front pushing in right now in our southwest counties. In fact, we can check it out by looking at the wind fields, and southeast wind tells me the warm front's riding through here and is pushing in. So again, we'll start to see the atmosphere begin to thin out when it comes to cloud cover. In fact, the visible satellite now starting to show some sunshine starting to pop there across portions of western Kentucky and Illinois, southern Illinois. So some sun will build in as the front passes by. If you're seeing hints of sunshine, that should be a hint to you. The warm front is moving through your backyard. Now, the front is going to be chugging to the northeast, but it is going to be a tough battle to get this rain band out of the way, and it may not go much further than where it is now, and that's key for how things are going to play out later tonight. So we'll be monitoring how this front acts as it pushes toward Louisville this afternoon and how far it can push in, because if it doesn't make it all the way through, then we got a whole other problem to deal with. But if it does push all the way through or pushes too far through, we have a whole different scenario at play. So the warm surge is key on all this. Here is the reason why. We have an area of low pressure. If you look carefully, you can see what we call an MCV. Basically a little vortex, a little spinning low across portions of Missouri. This is becoming a MCS, complex of thunderstorms overall, that will organize more and more as we into this afternoon. Question is, how much of this is going to build up on the leading edge, especially for the afternoon period, as it moves into a warmer atmosphere and unstable because of the heating. Now, keep in mind, the sun is out in this area, but look at the clouds. They're about to move in, and it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. So they're not going to get a lot of heating in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky there. Not a tremendous amount, which should limit the severe threat as it approaches. Even for our area, we'll have some sunshine, but we still get the warm front through here before we can begin our heating process, and even that, again, short-lived because clouds will move back in. So this is why this is not an outbreak of severe weather. This is only I would say this is a high-end, marginal, low-end, slight kind of a deal. And the main threat would be damage or winds, but really, when you think about it, areas of low pressure, they're already spinning naturally, counterclockwise. So it's that spinning motion. Sometimes if you guys read the discussions off of us, or to talk about the winds backing, that's basically the same scenario here, where you get the directional shear just from the low pressure, where the winds change direction with height. And because of that, you can easily get a spin-up tornado. It may not be a strong, powerful thunderstorm. It could be just a reasonable thunderstorm that has a decent organization to it to produce maybe an isolated tornado. So that's the main issue when it comes to severe threat, really, for this round tonight. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. Flooding looks to be a bigger deal. I hope that all makes sense, because it's 9 in the morning and I ramble. Here is a couple of the high-res models that I'm going to show you. Here's the HRRR model. Shows spotty downpours all the way through about 2 p.m. HERT model is always off on timing. Sometimes it's a little too slow on things. And then as we into the afternoon, we'll begin to see pop-up thunderstorms as we begin to become unstable. Warm front should be already past us by 5. And then we get the MCV, or the whatever is left of it. The low pressure there in Missouri begins to move in with a band of showers and thunderstorms at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, 10 o'clock at night. Not exactly the best of timing there when it comes to instability. Here is the high res of the RPM model, our in-house model. Shows us this afternoon, developing a south wind. Now, it's got us close to 90 degrees. I didn't go that warm. I went mid-80s based on some sun that I'm seeing breaking out to the west, and I'm going to go keep with that. But it's going to be a sharp contrast. Once you go north of Louisville, 70s. So we're going from 70s, and I think our southern counties likely to hit 90s. So 70s to 90s across our 29 counties. This is what's going to create what we call a differential heating boundary for one over Indiana for thunderstorms to pop on that we'll need to monitor, and also some thunderstorms in the heat of the afternoon in our southern counties. But thunderstorms will move through the area. Some of those could be locally strong, but look at the pattern here when I animate this. You're getting clusters of thunderstorms that are going over the same spots over and over and over and over again until finally Tuesday morning everything begins to relax. Remember that. I'll come back to that. Let's discuss the severe potential first. Slight risk for severe weather, basically, right along the 65 and west corridor. I wouldn't go much further east of 65 at this point, but it's all based on the timing of the day, of especially the MCS that's coming in. Instability begins to ease back. Tomorrow, by the way, there is a slight risk for much of the area, in fact, all of the area. Although, I think it's going to be mainly, I would say, Lexington to Bardstown and Campbellsville, south and east, looks more likely to me, based on the latest data. All right, here's the issue, though. I mentioned the low pressure as it moves in. Here's the low. And this is where you get your shear in the southeast quadrant of the low. That's where you got to watch for the winds to back and run into the isolated trail threat. And again, it is this feature that is moving in this evening, and hence the slight risk that has been drawn for that feature. It doesn't cover the isolated stuff that pops ahead of it, by the way. So we'll be monitoring that. Now, looking at the potential for that to continue, say around 11 o'clock tonight, 10 or 11 o'clock, it does show, this is the NAM high res, by the way, it does show the potential there, right over us. What we need to monitor then is, are we going to have a cap become stable? Where you see the reds, that's where your reds and purple is your capped. And it's showing a weak cap in the area, so there could still be some active weather, even after sunset tonight. Although the HERT model is coming in with a much stronger SIN, as we call it, convective inhibition. The HERT model is coming in with a little more of an aggressive approach to that, which means a weaker version of thunderstorms. So that usually happens here, to be honest. The SIN usually wins out. So we'll monitor that. Again, the tornado threat, not a huge deal, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I just want to make sure I'm mentioning it. Overnight, though, this is where the low-level jet will kick in, and this is where we're going to run into problems, because a lot of the wind flow here at 850 especially is going to be parallel to the front that is stalled. That's why you're going to get that training effect of thunderstorms after thunderstorms. So we've got to figure out, where is that corridor going to be? It's not going to be a large area. It's only going to be about, I would say, 4 counties long on the map, which means a lot of you to the south of it especially, very little rainfall will take place. You'll be sitting in your area later tonight and looking at the radar and thinking, man, these guys are getting hammered north of me. Well, you're fine. Could be that way. That's why it's tough to forecast on TV for 29 counties when not all 29 counties are experiencing the same setup here tonight. And here's the reason why. Look at the NAM high-res potential rainfall. If you're able to see that, that is 9 inches in Louisville by Monday night. If we were to get that, we're running into a nightmare scenario of flooding in the city especially. Wouldn't rule it out in Indiana. Totals getting close to that. But let's not focus on totals yet. I want to focus on the idea of placement, because that's what we got to nail down, because the placement will impact. There's a big difference between 9 inches of rain in some areas of Indiana versus 9 inches of rain in the city of Louisville. But it does look like Indiana is going to take the brunt of it, but look at the sharp contrast to the south. Now let me show you the NAM high-res model that just updated, or the RPM. And it's been wavering. It's been trying to figure out where to put this heavy rain band at. And it's trying to focus more into Indiana with about 7-inch totals there, about 1 inch in Louisville, and then very little to the south. You see why it's a sharp contrast on impressive amounts to hardly anything. Flash photo watch has already been issued because of this. For that area is what they're focusing on. It wouldn't surprise me that if it could shift south still, so be aware of that. I'm going to draw it up to at least Louisville for the flooding risk, the greatest risk there. And as far as totals, I'm going to give it 2 to 5 plus for that locally higher 8-inch total, and then it drops off sharply to the south. There's a lot to track, guys, between now and the 4th of July. Stay tuned. We'll be sending out alerts on the app, and of course, we're going to have an update later on today. Thanks for watching.